I'll never forget the call I got from my friend, Sarah. Her voice was shaking and she sounded like she'd just survived a war zone. She had started her first job in Malaysia as a coordinator at a local college. She was so excited, thrilled to finally have some independence and a stable income. That first paycheck lit a fire in her. She took on extra work, volunteered for more projects, and quickly became the go-to person for her boss. The boss noticed her dedication and soon offered her an additional role, picking up international students from the airport. It was a prestigious task, and it came with a perk: a company car. She was over the moon. Every week she drove 3 hours to the international airport, enjoying the freedom and responsibility. But one day, something happened that changed everything. She was speeding along the highway at around 80 miles an hour, listening to her favourite playlist, when out of nowhere there was a deafening crack. Her windshield exploded, showering her in shards of glass. For a terrifying moment, she lost control of the car. It swerved wildly as she fought to stay on the road, her heart racing. She could barely see through the fragmented glass, and the car was veering dangerously close to the guardrail. Somehow, she managed to pull over to the side of the highway, shaking from head to toe. She had just stepped out, still disoriented and trembling, when a tow truck appeared, almost like it had been summoned. The driver, a burly man with a sinister grin and tattoos crawling up his neck, jumped out and walked over. "Looks like you need some help, miss," he said, his tone unnervingly calm for someone who'd just seen a car nearly crash. "Lucky for you, I'm here." Sarah was rattled, panicked, and alone in the middle of nowhere. The man told her there was a repair shop in a nearby town that could fix her windshield. Her instincts screamed to refuse, but she didn't have much choice. She still had to get to the airport to pick up the students. So, against her better judgment, she agreed. The tow truck led her down winding roads to a dingy little town that looked like it hadn't changed in decades. The repair shop was even worse, run down, with a group of thuggish-looking men lounging around. Her heart sank as she realized she was completely at their mercy. They quoted her an outrageous price, 3 times what it would normally cost, and refused to give her a receipt. They slapped on a cheap, flimsy windshield that they claimed was shatterproof. Desperate to get back on the road and shaken by the experience, she paid the extortionate fee and drove off. She felt humiliated and furious, but tried to put it behind her. 2 months passed, and Sarah had nearly forgotten about that day until it happened again. She was driving on the same stretch of highway, passing the same underpass, when her windshield shattered, just like before. This time, it wasn't just a crack. The entire thing collapsed inwards, showering her in a storm of tiny glass shards. The car jerked violently, skidding toward the guardrail. She barely managed to avoid a serious crash, but not before her arms were covered in dozens of tiny cuts, bleeding through her shirt. She pulled over, her body shaking with adrenaline and fear. And then, as if on cue, the same tow truck appeared. Same driver, same chilling grin. But this time, his eyes flickered with recognition. He approached her, that same creepy grin on his face. "Wow, miss, you again. What a coincidence. Looks like you've got some bad luck." Sarah's blood ran cold. This wasn't just bad luck. The realization dawned on her. This was a setup. She quickly called her boss, explaining the situation and pleading for help. He sent a male colleague and arranged for a tow truck from a reputable company near their office. As she waited, the tow truck driver hovered around, trying to convince her to let him tow her car again. He was insistent, almost aggressive, saying things like, "Come on, I'm just trying to help you out. It's dangerous out here." But Sarah stood her ground. She knew if she let him take her car, she'd be trapped in the same nightmare all over again. When her colleague finally arrived, the shady tow truck driver's demeanor changed. He became irritated, but Sarah's colleague's presence seemed to deter him from pushing any further. He muttered something under his breath, climbed back into his truck, and sped off. After her car was towed back to the office, Sarah got it repaired properly. Even with the cost of towing from 100 miles away, replacing the windshield, and fixing the dents from the accident, It was still cheaper than what she'd been forced to pay the first time. But Sarah couldn't shake off the feeling that she'd been targeted. She decided to find out more. One weekend, she drove back to that small town with her boyfriend. They parked discreetly and watched the shop from a distance. It didn't take long before they saw the same tow truck pulling up, towing a car with a shattered windshield. The driver got out, grinning, and led the unsuspecting driver into the same dingy shop. Sarah's heart sank. It was a scam. A well-rehearsed, insidious operation. They were shattering people's windshields on that stretch of highway and then luring them to this back alley shop to extort them for money. She realized she'd been lucky to get away relatively unscathed. The realization hit hard. Her life had been in real danger. And it wasn't just about the money. It was about control, manipulation, and preying on the vulnerable. Sarah reported the incident to the authorities, but she knew it might take a long time for them to crack down on such a sophisticated scheme. She shared her story with her colleagues and friends, warning them to be cautious on that highway. So, if you're ever driving down a lonely road and something doesn't feel right, trust your instincts. And if a tow truck shows up out of nowhere, be wary. You never know what traps might be lying in wait.